Welcome back. Now, globally, and more recently in Nigeria, there's a debate that is taking place about the appropriate age for a child, a woman, a girl to get married. I understand that not only are you a proponent of early marriage, you actually believe it has some pluses. Why is that?
Of course, this is a very, very, very controversial topic. My rules are pretty simple. Social and biological maturity is the customary determinant of marriage. And in the Yoruba language, they say balaga, you have matured. So if you have hit a stage of physical and social maturity, as determined.
What is social maturity? Because I think physical, we kind of all have a fairly decent idea what that means. What do you mean by social maturity?
Social maturity, for instance, is, if you look at the Fulani cattle rearers, the girls who run around with the cattle, they are not going to school anytime soon. They are physically mature. They have learned the trade of making further nono and everything and taking care of a man. They've learned from birth. Some of us, we go to school from birth and we learn about biology and this and that and all this other stuff. We spend our life learning and we don't know this, the first thing about marriage and relationships. For them, from birth, all they've been learning about is marriage, relationships, and social responsibility. And they've learned all of that. And they are physically mature. I say if someone like that is 13, you say, no, she should wait till she's 18. I'll say, wait till she's 18 doing what? She's not going to school. So what is she waiting doing?
You honestly believe
that's the way I see it.
That at 13, a girl has not just the physical, because I think my daughter at 14 is physically mature, but the emotional and the psychological knowledge she needs to enter into what potentially is a lifelong relationship, marriage.
In my view, for some of us, it actually goes down. As we grow older, we start to even lose that maturity. I think we are born with a lot of maturity of these things. Like you see, a baby girl plays with dolls, men play with cars. A lot of these things are innate. They are remote systems. I believe if you've lived in a society, it's about the learning. You have a girl who is 27. She's slept around. She's lived on the loose side. If you ask me, is she mature enough to marry? I'll tell you she's not. She needs to go and train in culture of partnership, and that's why a lot of people, relationships have divorces. So I don't think it's the age.
Is this about controlling female sexuality?
No,
is that what this is about? Because every time I talk to people who say women should get married early, the one recurrent theme seems to be, well, otherwise they will sleep around. So is this for you a tool for controlling female sexuality?
No, we just started a topic with girl marriage. But it's the same thing for me with males. As soon as a male...
So a boy should marry at 13?
At 13, if you're socially and physically mature, I see no reason why we need to tell you to wait till you're 18. I ask people, I say, why the 18 magic number? It's a white man who chose that.
No, I know, but the issue is this. Beyond numbers, I'm here talking about physical, emotional...
That's what I'm saying.
Maturity, and whether you can sit here and realistically say that a 13-year-old is in an emotional state to decide the man she's going to live the rest of her life with at 13.
Both ways. Let's say it both ways, so you'd not put me in this box where it looks like I'm talking about women. It's both, man or woman. If either of you is physically, socially, and emotionally mature, and who is going to judge that? We have to get people in the community who judge it. As a society, we've never sat down and looked at it and said, what is best in our best interest? What's our culture?
No, but we've seen what happens. I happen to come from Zamfara, and every day I see young girls who are married off at 13, divorced at 16, with 2 children that are taken from them so that the husband can bring in another 13-year-old. They're all around. I see the ones whose bodies are not mature, so they haven't even filled your criteria, and they go to have babies and they end up with VVF.
People give birth at much younger age in America, but they have proper healthcare services, so they don't have VVF. So it's about the health services. 16,
not the maturity of the body.
16-year-olds, 15-year-olds on the street, they're all pregnant in America. 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. And I think about it and I say, you see a 13-year-old get pregnant in society and you say, that's fine. But if you say she wants to marry, you say, no, What is wrong with a mature, physically, socially, and emotionally mature 13-year-old getting married?
The problem is you cannot convince anyone that at 13 a girl is particularly emotionally...
Please, let's talk about both men and women, because I'm talking about both.
But the point is,
I'm talking about both.
how many 13-year-old men do you see married off? Let's be realistic.
The problem is we need proper legislature to control people who abuse women. And abusing women happens regardless of age. You have people who marry 40-year-old women. In fact, there's a lot of abuse on the upper side of the list.
How does a 13-year-old
a lot of VVFs happen on the upper
whose father
side.
looks at her and says, you're 13 and you're mature and therefore you're going to get married to a 60-year-old man? How does she defend herself without legislation?
That's why I understand the process where they set arbitrary ages to protect society, because people end up messing up. But at the same time, that's why rather than us fight something and fight a fruitless fight, what we need to do is to establish and protect institutions that are going to monitor each instance of marriage, be the ones to screen the person and make sure that the person, guy or girl, is socially, physically, and mentally mature, and then also report with those marriages. If we focus on that, compared to focusing on something where over 70% of people in the North are married young.
Educating people on why they should send their kids to school and allow them to marry at a later age, you want a marriage police that will go to every house where they're marrying off a teenage girl to begin to ask questions about whether...
certificate in America, for instance, in America, 13-year-olds are allowed to marry, but it has to be approved by the court. And the reason why is because the court, you bring the marriage case to the court, and the court looks and evaluates and sees if that person is socially and physically mature.
I thought it was the parents.
No, in America it's the court. The court, for the 13-year-old, 12-year-old marriages in America, the court has to approve of it. So we have to do the same thing here. You bring it to a proper institution, and you check and you approve of the guy or the girl, and make sure that they are physically, socially mature. Let's go to our culture. It's called coming of age.
Can I ask you,
we never used to use
this. Is this a religious thing for you?
This is cultural.
Because you are a Muslim.
This is cultural. And in fact, in an article I wrote about it, I wrote all the different cultures. You have a coming of age test. You see whether the guy can jump the boat.
The world has changed.
Changed in what ways?
In many ways.
There's more violations, there's more rape, there's more divorces, there's more disease.
And so
I think it's negative.
The thing to do, instead of tackling those problems, is to say the one that takes place because there's a certificate, it is okay. That is the solution.
Because society has reviewed it. That's what makes it okay.
Are you married?
I'm a victim of... I wish someone had pushed me to marry when I was 16.
Are you married?
I'm not.
How old are you?
39.
Why not? Why didn't you get married at 13?
I regret it. I wish someone had hooked me up with a nice young lady at 13 if I was socially mature and made me married. By now I'd have some lovely children and I'll feel a little bit more fulfilled. I wish people did not discourage marriage the way they do.
Have you ever spoken to a 13-year-old who's been married to not an 18 and 19-year-old, because I think that's a different debate, but to a man that is her grandfather's age?
So,
have you, in the course of your research and advocating for this early marriage, have you actually taken the trouble to speak to someone?
I'm not sure many people who are advocating have, and for some who have, kudos. I haven't. But I have seen recordings of people who were young and who said they were strong.
So how can you speak for them if you haven't even taken the time to listen to them?
That's the situation where they say you can't fight corruption if you've not been part of this. You can't. I don't believe in advocacy being unless you've actually...
This is slightly different. This is us saying that you cannot be saying a 13-year-old is not violated when she's married off to a 60-year-old without speaking and hearing her side of the story. But that is what you're doing.
I've watched their side. I've watched tapes of it. And I think when you keep on saying she, it's like you're trying
because the majority of people who get married...
I talk straight up legislature. I talk right or wrong.
We are talking about the majority of victims of early marriage are women. The majority of victims of early marriage are women.
We need to address that. But I'm talking about the legislature. In America, if you're 13, you can get married.
Does a girl have a right to an education?
It doesn't say which sex. Does a guy have a right to an education? I'm not in any way separating the sexes. It's the same both ways. All of us have a right to education. All of us have a right to marry when we are physically, socially, and mentally mature, if approved by...
Who decides that? That is the point. Who decides what emotional maturity is for
We
a
had
13-year-old?
traditional systems. You jump the bull. They whip them with a cane. It's called coming of age. Look at coming of age. Look at mitzvah. In the Jews, they have the mitzvah and the
That's
the
a
two
religious ceremony.
These are. In Africa, we have the jumping the bull ceremony. You have the whipping ceremony. All those ceremonies were to determine if you are strong enough to resist that and face the challenges of a man. That's how we determine maturity. It's the white man who came and said, put 16 on it, put 18 on it. I don't believe in that stuff. I'm not colonially indoctrinated.
And yet, you are not married.
Because it's
But you want to defend
and for opening the
right,
table so that you have anything that's allowed, anything that's good and reasonable should be on the table.
and
You can marry
marrying
young,
off a
you can marry old.
13-year-old to a 60-year-old in your book
You keep on
is
bringing this
reasonable.
13 to 60
Yes.
thing. What about 13 to 15? Is that better?
No, I'm saying that
No,
those,
no, no. What about
I said
13
it
to
earlier,
15?
I said
So what
earlier
about
that
13 to
those are
15?
slight because you're marrying your mates. But
He's-
we're talking about...
But he may be a worse husband. I think this is the problem they have when they say, oh, I'm a politician, I like Buhari, I like this. I don't like anybody. I like your character. And if I find good character in a man who's 60, and if I find a thug, a cultist in a man who's 15, a boy who's 15, I want the 15 to marry my daughter, the 60. It's about character and personality and learning.
Isn't it about making laws that cover the generality of people, not the exceptions? And the generality of 13-year-olds, regardless of whether they're a man, or is a boy or a girl, are not likely to have the maturity emotionally and psychologically to enter into a relationship that's supposed to be lifelong.
And that's where we agree.
So then, but
I am
you
not
refuse-
against the laws made by the United Nations on this because I understand where they are coming from. Because we abuse the situation, let's protect them by letting it get to a certain age. So I understand where they are coming
But you
from.
argue against it.
No, I understand where they are coming from, but I argue that we have a right. We have a right as human beings to marry when we are biologically mature. God doesn't make the eggs come out.
So the rules-
God doesn't make the sperm come out. It has a meaning. But we need to come together as a society and respect each other and know that when a person, male or female, is physically, biologically, by God's rules, mature,
What protection?
he is eligible
What
to marry.
this same society,
Then he can decide to
this
rescind
same
his rights
society, let
and
me
allow
ask
it
you,
to go
this
to
same
18.
society, what protection should it put in place for those who get married at that age and are discarded 3-4 years later?
I could go as bad as even killing the man who discussed them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brimah, for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
You've been watching Straight Talk with me, Kadaria Ahmed. My guest was Dr. Peregrino Brimah. We discussed governance, party politics, Boko Haram, and child marriage. Join me next week when I'll be in conversation with another special guest. Have a very good evening.